Hey y'all, I'm Hope, and today's video is my book haul for January to March. I usually do a quarterly book haul because I like to check in and see where my own TBR is at. I'm actually currently trying to reduce my own TBR, so that's why I've been doing these quarterly. And I think to start, let's talk about that stat because I'm actually really happy with that this time around. Every quarter last year, my TBR rose, and then this year, at the beginning of 2023, I was at 330 books on my own TBR. That's including physical books, audiobooks, and ebooks. And so I was at 330, and now here at the end of March, it's actually April 1st today, I am now at 332. So my number did go up, but it only went up by 2 because I did manage to read quite a few of the books that I bought already. And also, because it only went up by 2, I'm really not mad about it because it was way better than I did in any previous quarter that I've been doing this. So I'm actually pretty happy that it only grew like the tiniest bit. And I'm also in the midst of 2 of these books, so I think that I'm probably going to be finishing those relatively soon, so I should be back down to that 330 pretty quick. So really pleased about that. And I think for this haul, let's start with the stuff that I bought for class. Almost all of these are already read, except for one poetry book and then one book that I'm still currently reading for a class. So let's just start there. The first thing that I got was Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market and Other Poems, which is the one that I have not read yet because we're reading it not for this upcoming week, but the following week, so I will be getting through that soon. I'm really excited about this. I've never read from Christina Rossetti before, and I think it's going to be really interesting. And then the rest of these are all physical books, so give me a second to pick them up because they're kind of chunky. These are all for the same class that I'm going to be reading that Christina Rossetti book for. This is a class on 19th century British literature, specifically revolutionary women in 19th century British literature. This is looking at people who were writing just after, well, during, just after, and then like a generation after the French Revolution. So it's pretty interesting, and I'm really enjoying this class. These, besides the Rossetti stuff, these are all the other books that I had to buy for that. Excluding, I also bought a new copy of Frankenstein, but I'm not counting that here because I already owned Frankenstein. The new version I got was the 1818 text, though, so that was interesting. It's also in the other room because I'm writing a paper about it right now. But the first thing that we've read was Letters Written in France in the Summer of 1790 by Helen Maria Williams. This was a really interesting look at her time in France a year after the fall of the Bastille, before the terror, and her kind of optimistic view of the revolution, which was really interesting. Then we had Charlotte Smith, Major Poetic Works. We read a selection of her elegiac sonnets, and then we also read The Immigrants and Beachy Head, which are her 2 longer works. Really interesting. I'm not usually a poetry person, but I think that she does some really interesting things with kind of connecting history to personal history, and also there's some interesting stuff with science in here, so I thought this was really interesting. How many times can I say interesting? It's a lot. Again, I'm just not usually a poetry person, so I don't think I have a lot to say on this. Then we read The Letter to the Women of England and the Natural Daughter by Mary Robinson. We actually only read that first half, Letter to the Women of England. I thought this was maybe the most interesting of the kind of feminist texts that we read because I think that the writing in here is really accessible and really interesting, and she uses anecdotes in a really fun way. Then I have The Vindications by Mary Wollstonecraft. We read selections out of both Vindication on the Rights of Men and Vindication on the Rights of Women. And then the last thing I have here is Persuasion by Jane Austen, which I think is my favorite thing we've read so far, besides Frankenstein, because obviously Frankenstein's one of my favorite books, but I really enjoyed Persuasion. I think this is a lot of fun. My last school book is for my other class, which is about the Canterbury Tales, so it is in fact the Canterbury Tales. This is a very chunky, floppy edition of the Canterbury Tales, and it's in the original Middle English, so that's been really interesting trying to read that. I think up next I have just one ebook that I bought, which was 6 Stories by Matt Wesolowski, which is I think a mystery or possibly a thriller about a reclusive investigative journalist, possibly a true crime blogger, somebody of that nature. Nobody really knows a lot about them, but they go to interview the 6 people who knew this guy who I believe was killed or disappeared like 10 years ago, and this journalist goes to talk to them, and it's a series of interviews that slowly unravels what happened to this guy. So then the next selection of stuff I have are things that were either gifted to me for Christmas or my birthday, or that I bought with gift cards that I received at that time. So first up, my partner was very sweet, and he gifted me the Chronicles of Pride by Lloyd Alexander, which is a children's fantasy series that when I was very young, I read just book 2 without knowing that it was in a series. It's The Black Cauldron, which is the book that the movie The Black Cauldron is based on. And I remembered reading it, and it made a really big impression on me as a child, and then I never could remember what it was called. many years later, I was talking to one of my best friends, and I was telling her about this book, and she goes, oh, I think that's The Black Cauldron. Yeah, it's a part of a series. And so I finally was able to find the series again, and then he gifted it to me for my birthday this year, and so I'm finally getting to go back and actually read the entire series, which has been really fun and nostalgic for me now that I'm getting to read it and see how I feel about it 20 years after first reading The Black Cauldron. And then the next few things are all things that I bought from my local bookstore with a gift card that my mom gave me for Christmas. So first up, I have Spirits Abroad by Zen Cho, which is a short story collection that's all speculative fiction stories that are based on Malaysian mythology, I believe. Sounds like a lot of fun. I've heard good things about this, and I think if I'm gonna like a short story collection, a kind of like horror speculative collection is the kind of collection I'm gonna like. Then I got The Verifiers by Jane Peck, which I believe is a kind of cozier mystery about a woman who works for a company that investigates people from dating apps, and then she gets involved in some sort of, I think, missing persons investigation. So I think this sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. I haven't really heard anything about this one, but I'm really interested in trying some cozy mysteries and some less dark mysteries, because I tend to read a lot of like crime procedurals and things like that. And then I've got a psychological thriller, which is The Hole, about a man who I believe is in a car accident. He's in some sort of accident that kills his wife. He survives, but he is, I think, paralyzed, at least partially, and so his mother-in-law is caring for him, but she's behaving strangely and she keeps digging holes in the yard. This was one that I picked up on a whim because it was on the, it's on the shelf at my local bookstore where they keep books that they've read for this book club that they have called Reading the World, and they read like all translated fiction from all over the world. And every once in a while I like to go over there and just see what they got, because I really like translated fiction and I've been enjoying exploring it a little bit more, and so I was curious to see what they had, and this just sounded like it was going to be fascinating. And then the last one from this stack is Hawk Mountain by Conor Habib, which is a horror novel about a guy who is approached by his high school bully while he's on vacation with his son. And it sounds like this one's going to be very creepy as well, kind of in a similar way to The Hole. It sounds like it's very psychological and very intense. So I'm curious to see what I think of this, especially because I don't think I've heard anyone talk about this book yet. Why is my Fitbit going off? Oh, okay. Apparently filming counts as active zone minutes, because my Fitbit just went off to tell me I'd hit my weekly goal. Next book I have here is the only book that I managed to read before it came out, because I had an ARC for this one. And I've been doing a terrible job with ARCs this year. But this was A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher, and I loved this. I really enjoyed it. I just did a full review of this recently. Had a great time filming that, because I did something where I was playing Phasma while also reviewing this book, since it was like haunted houses was the theme. And I really enjoyed this, and I'm really glad that it's out now so that more people can read it. I think it's a lot of fun. The next few books here are all things that are continuations of series that I haven't actually started, which is kind of a trend for me, or it was for a little bit there. I'm doing better about it now, kind of a couple months on. But these are all continuations for series that I'm hoping to get to soon. So first up, I have Nona the Ninth, which is the third book in the Locked Tomb quadrilogy, I think. I think it's 4 books now. I believe the last book, Alecto, comes out in like September or something, so I'm hoping to do a full read of the rest of the series, kind of leading up to that. Then I have Fevered Star, which is the sequel to Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, and I've heard that this is a pretty good continuation of that series. I started Black Sun, and I think I'm like 150 pages in, and I was really enjoying it, and then this was 50% off, so I went ahead and picked it up, and I think I'm going to try and also get to this one soon so I can go ahead and binge both of those before the third book comes out, I think also later this year. And then lastly here I have Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones, and I have not yet read My Heart is a Chainsaw, but I'm really looking forward to it. Then I got a couple volumes of manga that I picked up. This one I've already read, This is the Way of the House Husband Volume 5. I love this series. It's like a palate cleanser between other things. It's just very fun and very silly. So I have already read this one. And then I have Phantom Tales of the Night Volume 1, which was one that I picked up on the recommendation of Di from Dices19. She'd recommended this. I said in a video at one point that I was looking for more horror manga to kind of branch out and try some things that weren't just Junji Ito, and she gave me several really interesting recommendations, and this is the one that I was able to find. I'm struggling to find the other ones locally, so I'm gonna have to probably order those from somewhere, but I am hoping at some point to do a video reading some of her recommendations, because I am really interested in kind of branching out and trying some different horror manga, and this one just sounded really interesting. The rest of these are mostly books that I have bought for myself on a whim. So now we're in the kind of last chunk of things that I bought this quarter. But first up I have some Jane Austen's. I have Mansfield Park and Sense and Sensibility, which were the last two of her major works that I didn't already own. I've read 3 of her major works, and I have these 2 and Emma left to read. So I'm really enjoying Jane Austen's writing, and I'm hoping to do some more reading of this over the summer. So I went ahead and picked these up when I had a big project due, and I got it turned in, and I kind of like treated myself to these, I think, right before spring break. It's just a little treat to myself for having made it through all of the writing I had to turn in before I could go on my spring break. Next up, I have The Blade Itself and Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, which are the first and second books in his First Law trilogy. This is, I believe, the original trilogy. I think this is his debut novel. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think so. And I bought these because the Catch Up Book Club is doing a First Law along where they're reading all of the books in this First Law world, which I believe there's 10 currently. So I went ahead and started The Blade Itself. They've already had the live show because it was at the beginning of March, actually. This was their January-February pick, and I did not manage to finish it in time. I'm currently still reading it. So then I went ahead and bought Before They Are Hanged so that I can read that. And I'm hopeful that between the two of them, I might be able to get to them in time to see the Before They Are Hanged live show. Next up, I have one that I got for my research interests, and this is Player vs. Monster. This is a game studies book about video game monsters, and I am so excited to read this. And I'm kind of planning for my thesis right now, so that's kind of why I want to go ahead and read this, because I'm hoping to work game studies into my thesis. And then the last 2 we've got here, one of these was a pre-order, which is Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. I think it sounds like a lot of fun. I think I've mentioned this earlier, but I'm really interested in picking up some more kind of cozy mystery things, and I know that I've heard good things about other books by Jesse Cusatanto, so I was really wanting to try this one because I think it just sounds like fun about like an older Chinese woman who gets involved in a murder investigation when a dead body shows up in her tea shop. I think it sounds like a lot of fun, and I'm really excited about it. And then the last one I've got here is Woman Eating by Claire Coda, which I picked up because none of the libraries near me had it, so I wanted to pick up a copy of this because I've been wanting to read it for a while. It's a kind of literary vampire story about a woman who is a vampire, but she's also like living on her own for the first time, and she's in her mid-20s, and it's really interesting so far. This is another one that I'm currently reading, and I don't know that I'm totally vibing with the writing style, but I am really enjoying the protagonist, and I'm curious to see where her story is gonna go. So those are all of the books that I've acquired in the first 3 months of the year. And I'm looking forward to reading all of these. I'm really pleased that my TBR didn't rise any more than it did, just 2 books. And I'm currently in the middle of Woman Eating and The Blade Itself, so I'm hopeful that I can get through both of those soon, and the number will hopefully start to go down soon. So anyway, I'm really happy about this, and I'm looking forward to reading all of these books. Like, so looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to having some time in the summer to do some more like substantial reading as well. So a little ways off yet because I still have 1 more month of classes, but soon. But that's all I have for you today. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there is more content coming soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.